The dust cloud on the horizon had long since disappeared, taking with it every soul Adelaide Jenkins had known for the past 4 months, and she stood there clutching her mother's silver locket while the prairie wind whipped her skirts around her ankles like a cruel reminder that she was utterly alone. She had been gathering wildflowers near a creek bed that morning, wanting to press them into the Bible her mother had given her before the cholera took her in Independence. The wagon train had been making good time across the Nebraska territory, and Adelaide had only wandered a short distance from the trail. But when she returned, basket of purple asters in hand, the wagons were gone, all of them. Not a single soul had waited. Adelaide had run after them, calling out until her throat was raw, her bonnet falling back against her shoulders and her carefully pinned hair coming loose. But the prairie swallowed her voice, and the dust settled, and the terrible truth became clear. They had left her. Whether by accident or design, she could not say, though she suspected the latter. She had no family among the train, no husband, no protector. Just an orphan girl of 22 who had paid her last dollars for passage to Oregon, hoping to find work as a teacher in one of the new settlements, Mrs. Hartwell, the wagon master's wife, had made her disapproval known from the start. A young, unmarried woman traveling alone was unseemly, she said. It brought bad luck. When 2 wagons broke their axles in the same week, Adelaide heard the whispers. When little Tommy Crawford took ill with fever, Mrs. Hartwell's eyes had found Adelaide across the campfire with cold accusation. Now, Adelaide stood in the middle of the vast emptiness with nothing but the clothes on her back, the locket around her neck, and the basket of wildflowers that mocked her with their fragile beauty. She had no food, no water, no weapon, no shelter. The September sun was still warm, but she knew the nights would be cold, and there were wolves. And worse. She tried to think rationally, though panic clawed at her chest. The nearest settlement had been 2 days behind them, Fort Kearney. Could she walk back? The trail was clear enough, the ruts from thousands of wagon wheels carved deep into the earth. But 2 days by wagon meant at least a week on foot, maybe more. Without food or water, she would never make it. Adelaide sank to her knees in the dirt, and for the first time since her mother died, she allowed herself to weep. Not the quiet, dignified tears she had shed at the graveside, but great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. She wept for her mother, for her father who had died when she was small, for the life she had imagined in Oregon that would never be. She wept for her own foolishness in believing that the world held any kindness for a girl alone. She did not hear the horse approach until it was nearly upon her. Adelaide looked up, tears still streaming down her face, and saw a man astride a paint horse, silhouetted against the afternoon sun. For a moment, fear eclipsed even her despair. Out here, a man could do anything he wanted, and there would be no one to stop him, no one to hear her scream. But the man dismounted slowly, keeping his hands visible, and when he spoke, his voice was gentle. "Miss, are you hurt?" Adelaide scrambled to her feet, wiping her face with the back of her hand. She tried to compose herself, to find some shred of dignity, but her voice came out broken and small. "They left me. The wagon train. They just left me." The man was tall, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of creek water after rain. He wore the practical clothes of a working cowhand, worn denim trousers, a leather vest over a chain-brace shirt, a hat that had seen better days. A gun belt sat low on his hips, but his hands stayed away from it. He looked to be perhaps 25, with a weathered quality that suggested he had seen his share of hard living. "How long ago?" he asked, scanning the horizon. "Hours. This morning. I was gathering flowers, and when I came back they were gone." He studied the ground, the wagon ruts heading west. They made good time, They will be well ahead by now, I know. Adelaide felt fresh tears threatening. I know I cannot catch them, I just do not know what to do. The man looked at her for a long moment, and she could see him weighing his options, calculating what helping her would cost him. She wanted to tell him to go, to leave her to whatever fate awaited, because she could not bear to hope and be disappointed again. But the words would not come. My name is Samuel Reed, he said finally. I have been driving cattle up from Texas. I am on my way to Chloride, Colorado. It is a mining town in the mountains about 2 weeks' ride southwest of here. I have a sister there. She runs a boarding house. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I cannot leave you here alone. You would not survive the night. If you are willing, you can ride with me to Chloride. My sister will take you in, help you find work. It is not Oregon, but it is better than dying out here. Adelaide stared at him. You would do that, for a stranger? I would not be able to live with myself if I rode away, Samuel said simply. But I need you to understand something. We will be riding together for 2 weeks, just the two of us. When we reach Chloride, there will be talk. People will make assumptions. I will do everything in my power to protect your reputation, but I cannot guarantee what folks will say or think. My reputation. Adelaide almost laughed, the sound harsh and brittle. Those people left me to die because I have no husband, no family, no value. I do not think I can afford to worry about my reputation anymore. Samuel's expression softened. All right then. We should get moving. I want to put some miles behind us before dark. There is a creek about 5 miles south where we can make camp. Do you have anything you need to gather? Adelaide looked down at the basket of wildflowers, then let it fall from her hand. No, I have nothing. That is all right. I have supplies enough for both of us. Samuel walked back to his horse and mounted, then held out his hand. Come on, you can ride with me. Adelaide hesitated only a moment before taking his hand. He pulled her up behind him with surprising ease, and she had to wrap her arms around his waist to keep her seat. She could feel the warmth of him through his shirt, the solid strength of his back. It was strange to be so close to a man, to touch him this way. Her mother would have been scandalized, but her mother was dead, and Adelaide was alive, and she was grateful. They rode in silence across the prairie, the paint horse moving at a steady pace. Adelaide watched the landscape roll by, the endless grass, the occasional stand of cottonwoods marking a water source. Hawks circled overhead, and once she saw a small herd of antelope in the distance. The world was so vast, so empty, so indifferent to human suffering. And yet Samuel Reed had stopped. He had not left her there. That had to mean something. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, they reached the creek Samuel had mentioned. It was a small stream, barely 3 feet wide, but the water ran clear over smooth stones. Cottonwoods and willows grew along its banks, and Adelaide could hear birds singing in the branches. Samuel dismounted and helped Adelaide down, his hand steady at her waist. We will camp here for the night, he said. There is grass for my horse and water for us. I have some dried beef and biscuits. It is not much, but it will keep us until tomorrow. It sounds like a feast, Adelaide said, and meant it. She had not realized how hungry she was until he mentioned food. Samuel unsaddled his horse and hobbled it near the water, then began gathering wood for a fire. Adelaide wanted to help, but she felt suddenly exhausted, as though all the fear and grief of the day had caught up with her at once. She sank down on a fallen log and watched Samuel work. He moved with the easy efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times before, building a small fire ring with stones from the creek, arranging the kindling just so. When the fire was crackling merrily, Samuel pulled out a canteen and a small sack from his saddlebags. He handed Adelaide the canteen first. Drink slow, he advised. Your stomach will not thank you if you gulp it down. The water was lukewarm but tasted better than anything Adelaide could remember. She forced herself to sip it slowly, though she wanted to drain the whole thing. Samuel divided the dried beef and hard biscuits between them, and they ate in companionable silence as the stars began to appear overhead. "Tell me about your sister," Adelaide said eventually, needing to hear a human voice, needing to know more about this man who had saved her life. Samuel poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling into the darkness. "Her name is Sarah. She is 3 years older than me, stubborn as a mule and has a heart bigger than the whole territory. Our parents died when I was 15. Yellow fever, down in Missouri. Sarah was already married by then, and she and her husband took me in. They were good to me, taught me to work cattle, gave me a place to belong." "What happened to her husband?" Samuel's expression darkened. "He died 2 years ago, mining accident in Chloride. Sarah could have come back east, lived with our aunt, but she stayed. Said she had built a life there and she was not about to give it up. She took the money from his claim and bought a boarding house. By all accounts, she is doing well. I have not seen her in over a year, but we write letters when we can." "She sounds remarkable," Adelaide said. "She is. She will like you." Samuel glanced at Adelaide across the fire. "What about you? Where were you headed when the wagon train left you?" "Oregon, the Willamette Valley. I heard there were schools being built, that they needed teachers. I can read and write and cipher. My mother taught me. She was educated, which was rare for a woman of her class. She married my father for love, and he died young, and we never had much money after that. But she always said education was a kind of wealth that no one could take from you." Adelaide's voice caught. "She died 3 months ago, cholera. After that, there was nothing left for me in Independence. The house was rented and I had no family, no prospects. Oregon seemed like a new start." "I am sorry about your mother," Samuel said, and the sincerity in his voice made Adelaide's eyes sting with fresh tears. "Thank you." She took a shaky breath. "I know you did not ask for this, to be saddled with a stray woman who has no one and nothing, but I am grateful. More grateful than I can express." "You are not a burden," Samuel said firmly, "and you are not nothing. You are a person who deserves to be treated with decency. Any man who would not stop to help you is not worth the ground he walks on." They fell silent again, and Adelaide watched the fire burn down to embers. Samuel spread out a bedroll near the flames and insisted Adelaide take it. "I will keep watch," he said. "Make sure nothing disturbs us." "You need to sleep too," Adelaide protested, but Samuel shook his head. "I will sleep tomorrow. Tonight I want to make sure you are safe. Please just rest." Adelaide was too tired to argue. She lay down on the bedroll, pulling Samuel's blanket over her shoulders. It smelled of horse and leather and wood smoke, and somehow that was comforting. She closed her eyes, listening to the crackle of the fire and the soft sounds of the prairie night. Against all odds, she felt safe. When Adelaide woke, the sun was already well above the horizon, and Samuel was cooking something over a newly built fire. He looked up as she stirred and gave her a small smile. "Morning. I hope you do not mind, but I shot a rabbit earlier. Figured fresh meat would do us both good." Adelaide sat up, pushing hair out of her face. She must look a fright, with her dress rumpled and her hair in complete disarray, but Samuel did not seem to care. "That smells wonderful," she said, and it did. Her stomach growled audibly, making Samuel's smile widen. "Should be ready soon. There is water in the canteen if you want to wash up. Creek is just over there." Adelaide took the canteen and walked to the creek, suddenly self-conscious. She splashed water on her face and did her best to tidy her hair, re-pinning it into some semblance of order. When she returned, Samuel had the rabbit divided onto 2 tin plates, and they ate hungrily. The meat was tough but flavorful, and Adelaide thought she had never tasted anything so good. After breakfast, Samuel packed up the camp with the same quiet efficiency he had shown the night before. He helped Adelaide mount the paint horse, then swung up behind her this time, his arms coming around her to hold the reins. "I thought you might like to see where we are going," he said, his breath warm against her ear. "And I will be honest, my backside could use a break from sitting forward." Adelaide felt her cheeks warm at his nearness, at the intimacy of being held this way. But there was nothing improper in his touch, nothing that made her uncomfortable. If anything, she felt protected, safe in a way she had not felt since her mother was alive. They rode south and west, following trails that seemed invisible to Adelaide but were clearly marked in Samuel's mind. He pointed out landmarks as they went. A distinctive rock formation that looked like a woman's profile, a stand of trees where he had once sheltered from a tornado, a dried-up creek bed where he had found arrowheads as a boy. He talked easily, filling the silence with stories from his years working cattle, and Adelaide found herself laughing at his tales of ornery bulls and river crossings gone wrong. "You have a nice laugh," Samuel said at one point, and Adelaide felt that warmth in her cheeks again. "I have not had much to laugh about lately," she admitted. "Thank you for giving me a reason." "I reckon we all need reasons to laugh," Samuel said. "Lord knows this world gives us plenty of reasons to cry." They rode through the afternoon, stopping only briefly to water the horse and stretch their legs. The landscape was beginning to change, becoming more rolling, more varied. Adelaide could see hills in the distance, the first hints of the Rocky Mountains that lay ahead. The thought of mountains thrilled her. She had never seen anything higher than the bluffs along the Missouri River. As the sun began to set, Samuel guided them to a small grove of trees surrounding a spring. "We will camp here tonight," he said. "This is good water, and the trees will give us some shelter if the wind picks up." They fell into an easy routine, Adelaide gathering firewood while Samuel tended to the horse and set up their camp. They ate more dried beef and biscuits, and Samuel produced a small bag of dried apples that Adelaide devoured with undisguised delight. "I have not had apples since last fall," she said, savoring each chewy piece. "These are wonderful." "My sister sent them to me," Samuel said. "She knows I have a weakness for anything sweet." "You must miss her," Adelaide said. "I do, but I will see her soon. We both will." Samuel hesitated, then added, "I want you to know that Sarah will treat you well. She has no patience for gossip or judgment. If anyone in Chloride gives you trouble about traveling with me, she will set them straight quick enough." "Do you think there will be trouble?" Adelaide asked, voicing the worry that had been growing in the back of her mind. "I think some folks always find something to talk about," Samuel said honestly. "But I also think most people are decent enough, and once they get to know you, they will see that you are a good person who found herself in a hard situation. Anyone worth knowing will understand that." Adelaide wanted to believe him, but she had learned the hard way that the world was not always kind to women without protection, without family, without means. Still, she nodded and tried to smile. "I hope you are right. Even if I am wrong, you will have me and Sarah on your side." That counts for something. They talked late into the night, sharing stories from their childhoods, their dreams for the future. Samuel told her about his plans to start his own ranch someday, to breed horses and cattle on land that belonged to him. Adelaide talked about her love of teaching, of the joy she found in watching a child's face light up when they finally understood a difficult concept. "Maybe you could teach in Chloride," Samuel suggested. "I do not know if they have a proper school yet, but I bet there are plenty of children who would benefit from learning their letters and numbers." "Maybe," Adelaide said, allowing herself to hope just a little. "That would be nice." The days began to blur together into a rhythm of riding and camping, talking and sharing meals. Samuel was an easy companion, neither too talkative nor too silent. He treated Adelaide with unfailing respect, always making sure she was comfortable, never pressing too close or making her feel unsafe. And Adelaide found herself looking forward to their conversations, to the sound of his voice, to the rare but genuine smiles that transformed his weathered face. They were 4 days out from where Samuel had found Adelaide when they encountered their first real problem. They had been riding through increasingly rough terrain, the flat prairie giving way to rocky hills and narrow passes. Samuel had been quieter than usual that morning, his eyes constantly scanning the landscape, and Adelaide sensed his tension. "Is something wrong?" she finally asked. "Maybe nothing," Samuel said, "but I saw some tracks back a ways that I did not like. 3 horses unshod, could be wild horses or it could be something else." Adelaide felt her stomach tighten. Indians could be, or outlaws, or just travelers like us. No way to know for sure. Samuel's hand moved to rest on his gun. "I am going to take us through that pass up ahead. It is narrow, but it will give us some cover and get us through these hills faster. Just stay alert and stay quiet." Adelaide nodded, suddenly very aware of how vulnerable they were. Samuel urged the paint horse forward at a faster pace, and they entered the pass with high rock walls rising on either side. The sound of the horses' hooves echoed off the stone, and Adelaide held her breath, half expecting someone to appear on the cliffs above them. But they made it through without incident, emerging into a wider valley dotted with sage and juniper. Samuel did not slow down until they were well clear of the pass, and even then, he kept glancing back over his shoulder. "I think we are all right," he said finally, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. "But I will feel better when we are out of these hills." They rode hard for the rest of the day, stopping only when the light failed and Samuel deemed it safe to make camp. That night, he built a smaller fire than usual and positioned them in a depression where the light would not be visible from a distance. "I do not mean to frighten you," Samuel said as they ate a cold supper of jerky and hardtack, "but I have learned to trust my instincts out here." Something felt wrong about those tracks. "I trust your instincts," Adelaide said, and she did. In the days they had been traveling together, Samuel had proven himself to be capable and cautious, never taking unnecessary risks. If he was worried, she would be a fool not to take him seriously. Samuel took first watch that night, sitting with his back to a rock and his rifle across his knees. Adelaide tried to sleep, but every sound made her jolt awake. The screech of an owl, the rustle of some small animal in the brush, the wind moving through the trees. Finally, she gave up and sat beside Samuel. "Cannot sleep?" he asked softly. "Too nervous," she admitted. "My mind will not settle." Samuel was quiet for a moment, then said, "Would it help if I talked? Sometimes a familiar voice can ease the mind." "Yes," Adelaide said gratefully. "Please." So Samuel talked, his voice low and steady in the darkness. He told her about the ranch he dreamed of building, describing it in such detail that Adelaide could almost see it. A sturdy house with a wide porch, a barn big enough for a dozen horses, pastures that stretched to the horizon. He talked about the kind of horses he wanted to raise, Mustangs mixed with good ranch stock, animals that were tough and smart and beautiful. "It sounds wonderful," Adelaide said. "I hope you build it someday." "Maybe someday," Samuel said. "First, I need to save enough money. Cattle driving pays decent, but land is expensive. It will take time." "Anything worth having takes time," Adelaide said, echoing words her mother used to say. "That is true enough." Samuel glanced at her, his face barely visible in the starlight. "What about you? What is your dream?" "I suppose I just want to belong somewhere," Adelaide said slowly. I want to have a place where people know my name and I know theirs, where I can be useful and valued, where I do not have to worry about being left behind. Samuel's expression turned serious. You will find that place, Adelaide. I promise you. The way he said her name with such certainty and warmth made something flutter in Adelaide's chest. She looked away, suddenly flustered, and changed the subject. It is getting cold. You should get some rest. I can keep watch for a while. You do not know what to watch for, Samuel said, but not unkindly. Then teach me. Show me what to look for. So Samuel did, pointing out the signs of danger. The sudden silence of night birds, the way horses would perk their ears toward a threat, the patterns of shadow that might hide movement. Adelaide listened intently, committing it all to memory. When Samuel finally agreed to rest, she sat with his rifle across her knees, feeling the weight of it, trying to imagine what she would do if danger actually came. But the night passed quietly, and when dawn broke, Samuel woke and declared them safe enough to move on. They ate a quick breakfast and rode out, putting as many miles as possible between themselves and the hills. By evening, they had reached flatter ground again, and Samuel's mood lightened considerably. We are making good time, he said as they made camp that night beside a small pond. Another week and we should reach Chloride, maybe less if the weather holds. I do not know whether to be glad or sorry, Adelaide admitted. This has been difficult, but I have enjoyed your company. I am not eager for it to end. Samuel looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. It does not have to end. I mean, we will still see each other in Chloride. I will be staying with Sarah for a while before I head back to Texas for another cattle drive, and you will be there too. It will not be the same, Adelaide said. We will not be like this anymore. No, I suppose not. Samuel stirred the fire, his expression troubled. Adelaide, I need to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, all right? Do you regret coming with me, knowing what people might say, the complications it might cause? Adelaide did not have to think about her answer. Not for a single moment. You saved my life, Samuel. Not just from dying out there on the prairie, but from giving up hope entirely. These days with you have reminded me that there is still goodness in the world, still people worth trusting. How could I ever regret that? Samuel looked relieved, but also something else. Something that made Adelaide's heart beat faster. I am glad, he said quietly, because I do not regret it either. Not at all. They held each other's gaze for a long moment, and Adelaide felt the air between them change, charged with something new and unexpected. She wanted to say more, to ask what he meant, but she was afraid of breaking whatever fragile thing was growing between them. So instead, she smiled and looked away, and they finished their meal in a silence that felt both comfortable and electric. The next several days passed in much the same way, with Samuel and Adelaide growing ever more comfortable with each other. They laughed more easily now, their conversations ranging from the profound to the silly. Samuel taught Adelaide how to identify edible plants and read animal tracks. Adelaide taught Samuel a song her mother had loved, and sometimes in the evenings, they would sing it together while the fire burned low. They were just over a week into their journey when they encountered other travelers for the first time. A family in a wagon, heading east, away from the mountains. The father was grim-faced and hollow-eyed, his wife clutching a baby to her chest. Two older children sat in the back of the wagon, staring at nothing. Samuel hailed them and they stopped, though the man kept his rifle prominently displayed across his lap. "Where are you folks headed?" Samuel asked. "Back to Kansas," the man said. "Mining did not pan out, lost everything we had in Chloride, nothing left for us there but heartbreak and debt." "I am sorry to hear that," Samuel said sincerely. "Is the trail ahead clear? Any trouble?" "Trail is fine. But I would not go to Chloride if I were you. Unless you have money already, you will just be throwing your life away on dreams that will not come true." The man's eyes moved to Adelaide. "Is that your wife?" "A friend," Samuel said carefully. "I am taking her to stay with my sister." The man grunted, clearly not believing it, but he said nothing more. His wife looked at Adelaide with something like pity, and that look burned more than any words could have. Then they moved on, their wagon creaking down the trail, and Samuel and Adelaide continued west. "Do not let him discourage you," Samuel said after a while. "Chloride is a mining town, yes, but not everyone there is chasing silver. There are shopkeepers and ranchers and farmers. People building real lives. Sarah is doing well, you will do well too." "I know," Adelaide said, though the encounter had unsettled her. "I just hate the way he looked at me, at us." "I know, I am sorry for that." Samuel's jaw tightened. "People see a man and woman traveling alone and they assume the worst. It is not fair and it is not right, but it is the way of things." "I suppose I should be used to it by now," Adelaide said. "Being judged unfairly, I mean. It seems to be the lot of women in this world." "That does not make it right," Samuel said fiercely. "And I will not stand for anyone treating you poorly, not while I am around." His words warmed Adelaide, even as she recognized the potential complications. Samuel was a good man, protective and kind. But what would happen when they reached Chloride? Would he still feel the same way about her? Would she still see him at all? The uncertainty gnawed at her. As they traveled deeper into Colorado, the landscape transformed. The flat prairie gave way to rolling foothills, and beyond them, the great peaks of the Rocky Mountains rose like giants against the sky. Adelaide had never seen anything so magnificent, so terrifyingly beautiful. Snow already capped the highest peaks, gleaming white in the autumn sun. "It is incredible," she breathed, craning her neck to take it all in. "Wait until you see it up close," Samuel said, and there was pride in his voice as though he had built the mountains himself. They were 2 days from Chloride when they made camp in a meadow surrounded by aspen trees. The leaves had turned golden, and when the wind blew, they shimmered like coins in the fading light. Adelaide gathered wood while Samuel tended to the horse, and when she returned with an armful of branches, she found him standing very still, staring at something in the distance. "What is it?" she asked, dropping the wood. "Riders," Samuel said, "coming this way, 3 of them." Adelaide felt her pulse quicken. "Should we run?" "Too late for that, they have already seen us." Samuel's hand moved to his gun. "Stay behind me, let me do the talking." The riders approached slowly, clearly in no hurry. As they drew closer, Adelaide could see they were rough-looking men, their clothes stained and worn, their faces hard. The one in the lead had a scar running from his left eye to his jaw, and when he smiled, Adelaide saw that he was missing several teeth. "Evening, folks," the scarred man said, his eyes moving between Samuel and Adelaide with undisguised interest. "That is a fine-looking horse you have got there." "He is not for sale," Samuel said evenly. "We are just passing through. No trouble wanted." "Did we say anything about trouble?" The scarred man exchanged glances with his companions, and they all laughed. "We are just being friendly. Name is Coulter. These are my associates, Frank and Dooley." "Nice to meet you," Samuel said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Like I said, we are just passing through." "Where are you headed?" Coulter asked, ignoring Samuel's clear desire to end the conversation. "Chloride." "Is that so? We are just coming from there. Rough town, not much law." A man could get away with all sorts of things in a place like that. Coulter's eyes moved to Adelaide again, and she felt her skin crawl. "That is a pretty woman you have traveling with you. Wife." "That is none of your concern," Samuel said, his voice hardening. "Touchy are not we." Coulter grinned. No need to get defensive, friend, just making conversation. Tell you what, though, you folks should be careful on the trail. All sorts of dangerous people out here. Never know who you might run into. It was a threat, thinly veiled, and Adelaide saw Samuel's jaw clench. But he kept his hand away from his gun, his voice steady. We appreciate the warning. Now if you will excuse us, we have camp to make. Coulter sat his horse for a moment longer, clearly enjoying Samuel's discomfort. Then he touched his hat in a mocking salute. Sure thing. You folks have a good evening now. Stay safe. The three men rode off, and Samuel waited until they were out of sight before exhaling slowly. We need to move, he said. Right now, I do not trust them. They will wait until dark and come back. Are you sure? Adelaide asked, even as she scrambled to help pack up their supplies. I am sure. I have dealt with men like that before. They are looking for easy prey. Samuel worked quickly, saddling the horse and stowing their gear. We will ride through the night. Put as much distance between us and them as possible. They mounted and rode hard, pushing the paint horse as fast as they dared in the failing light. Samuel kept them to the main trail for a while, then suddenly veered off, guiding them up a steep hillside through the aspen trees. The horse stumbled several times on the loose scree, and Adelaide clung to Samuel's waist, her heart in her throat. When they reached the top of the ridge, Samuel paused, listening. Adelaide heard nothing but the wind and the sound of their own breathing. I think we lost them, Samuel said after a long moment. But we are not stopping yet. They rode through the night, Samuel using the stars to navigate, keeping them moving west. Adelaide dozed fitfully, jerking awake every time the horse changed gait or Samuel tensed. By the time dawn broke, painting the mountains pink and gold, they had covered an astonishing amount of ground. Samuel finally allowed them to stop in a sheltered canyon where a creek tumbled down from the mountains. They were both exhausted, the horse lathered with sweat. Samuel rubbed the animal down carefully, speaking to it in low, soothing tones before finally allowing himself to rest. We should be safe here, he said, though he kept his rifle close. Those men would have no way to track us, not after we left the main trail. And we are getting close to Chloride now, maybe another day and a half. That was terrifying, Adelaide said, her hands still shaking slightly. Do you think they would have hurt us? Yes, Samuel said bluntly. Men like that do not leave witnesses. They would have killed me and done worse to you. I am sorry you had to see that side of the world. I wish I could have protected you from it. You did protect me, Adelaide said. You got us away from them. That is all I could have asked for. Samuel looked at her, and Adelaide saw exhaustion in his eyes, but also something else, something that made her breath catch. I would not let anything happen to you, he said. I want you to know that. As long as I am breathing, you are safe. The intensity of his words, the way he looked at her when he said them, made Adelaide's chest tighten. She wanted to close the space between them, to touch his face, to tell him that she felt the same way. But fear held her back. What if she was misreading everything? What if he was just being kind, fulfilling an obligation instead, she said softly. I know. I trust you, Samuel. They rested for a few hours, taking turns keeping watch, though Adelaide suspected Samuel barely slept. When they set out again in the early afternoon, the mountains loomed larger than ever, and Adelaide could smell pine on the wind. They followed the creek upward, the trail growing steeper, and Adelaide marveled at the change in scenery. Instead of prairie grass, there were now towering evergreens and aspens. Wildflowers still bloomed in the meadows, defying the season. Eagles soared overhead, and once Adelaide saw a bear in the distance, a massive brown shape foraging near a berry bush. Do not worry, Samuel said when she gasped. He is more afraid of us than we are of him. Probably. That evening they made camp in a grove of pines, and Samuel managed to catch several fish from the creek. He cooked them over the fire, and Adelaide thought she had never tasted anything so delicious. They ate in comfortable silence, listening to the creek and the wind in the trees. "We will reach Chloride tomorrow," Samuel said eventually. "Probably by late afternoon if we make good time." "Oh." Adelaide felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Relief that their journey was almost over, that she would have a roof over her head and a chance to start fresh. But disappointment too, because these days with Samuel had been precious in a way she was only beginning to understand. "Sarah will probably have 100 questions," Samuel continued. "She will want to hear every detail of the trip. Fair warning, she is a bit overwhelming at first, but she means well." "I am sure we will get along fine," Adelaide said. Samuel hesitated, then said, "Adelaide, I need to tell you something. Before we get to Chloride, before things get complicated." Adelaide's heart began to pound. "All right. This trip, these days with you, they have meant something to me, more than I expected. When I found you out there on the prairie, I thought I was just helping someone in need, doing the right thing, but it has been more than that." "You have been more than that." Samuel looked at her, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "I know the timing is poor. I know you have been through so much, and the last thing you need is a cowhand with no prospects and no fixed address making his feelings known. But I cannot let you walk into that town tomorrow without telling you the truth. I have grown to care for you, Adelaide, a great deal." Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. "I have grown to care for you too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I did not think I would ever feel this way about anyone. After everything that happened, after being abandoned, I thought perhaps I was meant to be alone. But then you stopped. You did not leave me. And every day since, you have treated me with kindness and respect, and something I think might be affection. How could I not care for you?" Samuel moved to sit beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I do not know what the future holds," he said. "I have to go back to Texas in a few weeks for another drive, and you will be starting a new life here. But I would like to think that maybe when I come back we could see where this goes, if you would want that." "I would want that," Adelaide said, and then, feeling brave, she took his hand. Their fingers intertwined, and it felt like the most natural thing in the world. "I would want that very much." They sat there by the fire, hands clasped, not speaking, just being together. And Adelaide felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope. Not the desperate, fragile hope of survival, but something stronger, deeper. The hope that came from connection, from finding someone who saw you and valued you and chose to stay. The next morning, they rode toward Chloride with a new ease between them. Samuel pointed out landmarks as they climbed higher into the mountains. Old mining claims, the remnants of a ghost town, a waterfall that cascaded down a cliff face in a silver ribbon. The air grew thinner and cooler, and Adelaide pulled Samuel's jacket tighter around her shoulders. "There," Samuel said as they crested a ridge. "Chloride." Adelaide looked down into a narrow valley carved between steep mountains. The town was larger than she had expected, with dozens of buildings lining a single main street. She could see the dark openings of mine shafts dotting the hillsides, and tailings piles of gray rock that scarred the landscape. Smoke rose from chimneys, and even from this distance she could hear the faint sounds of industry. Hammering, the rumble of ore carts, the voices of men calling to each other. "It is not pretty," Samuel said, "but it is a real town, and Sarah is there. Come on, let us go find her." They rode down the mountain into Chloride, and Adelaide felt every eye on them as they made their way along the main street. Men stopped their work to stare. Women whispered behind their hands. Adelaide held her head high, refusing to show any shame or embarrassment. She had done nothing wrong. Samuel had done nothing wrong. Let them think what they wanted. Samuel stopped in front of a large, two-story building with a sign that read Reed's boarding house in neat letters. He helped Adelaide dismount, then tied the horse to the hitching post. Before he could knock, the front door flew open and a woman rushed out. "Samuel," she cried, throwing her arms around him. "I got your telegram from Fort Kearney saying you were coming, but I did not expect you for another week. Oh, let me look at you. You are too thin. Have you been eating properly?" Samuel laughed, hugging her back. "I am fine, Sarah. I always eat properly. You know that." Sarah stepped back, and Adelaide got her first good look at Samuel's sister. She was tall like Samuel, with the same dark hair and creek-water eyes. Her face was kind but weathered, and there was a no-nonsense air about her that reminded Adelaide of her own mother. Sarah's eyes moved to Adelaide, and her expression shifted from joy to confusion. "Who is this?" she asked, looking between them. "This is Adelaide Jenkins," Samuel said. "I found her on the trail about 2 weeks ago. Her wagon train left her behind, and I could not leave her out there alone. I told her you would help her, give her a place to stay until she gets on her feet. I hope that was all right." Sarah's expression cycled through several emotions too quickly for Adelaide to identify. Then she stepped forward and took Adelaide's hands. "Of course it is all right. Any friend of Samuel's is welcome here. Come inside, dear. You look exhausted. When was the last time you had a proper meal? Or a bath?" "I do not even remember," Adelaide admitted, suddenly feeling the weight of the past 2 weeks. Sarah ushered them both inside, calling out orders to people Adelaide could not see. Within minutes, Adelaide found herself in a small but clean room on the second floor with a basin of warm water and clean clothes laid out on the bed. "These were mine," Sarah said. "They should fit you well enough for now. Take your time washing up. When you are ready, come downstairs. We will have supper ready." Adelaide was left alone, and she stripped off her dusty, travel-stained clothes with relief. She washed as thoroughly as she could with the basin and pitcher, marveling at how good it felt to be clean again. Sarah's dress fit reasonably well, if a bit loose in the bodice and short in the hem. But it was clean and whole, and that was all that mattered. When Adelaide came downstairs, she found Samuel and Sarah sitting in a small dining room, talking in low voices. They both looked up as she entered, and Samuel's expression softened. "You look nice," he said, and Adelaide felt herself blush. "Thank you. And thank you, Sarah, for the clothes and the room. You have been incredibly kind." "It is nothing," Sarah said, waving a hand. "Now eat. You must be starving." The meal was simple but hearty. Beef stew, fresh bread, and apple pie for dessert. Adelaide ate until she thought she might burst, and Sarah kept refilling her plate, clearly pleased to have someone to feed. As they ate, Samuel told Sarah the full story of how he had found Adelaide and their journey to Chloride. Sarah listened intently, her expression growing more and more troubled. "Those men who threatened you," she said when Samuel finished. "Did they follow you here?" "No, we lost them in the hills. I made sure of it." Samuel's voice was confident, but Adelaide could see the worry in his eyes. "Even if they somehow tracked us, they would not dare make trouble in Chloride. There are too many people here, too many witnesses." "I hope you are right," Sarah said. She turned to Adelaide. "I want you to know that you are safe here. This boarding house is home to 15 people right now, and every single one of them would come running if you called for help. You are part of our family now, as far as I am concerned." Adelaide felt tears threaten again. "Thank you," she managed. "You have no idea what that means to me." "I think I do," Sarah said gently. "Samuel told me about your mother, about the wagon train leaving you. You have had a terrible time of it, and you deserve some peace and stability. I can offer you both. As for work, I could use another pair of hands around here. The boarding house keeps me busy, and I am not getting any younger. If you would be willing to help me with cooking and cleaning, I can pay you a small wage plus room and board. It is not much, but it is a start." "That sounds perfect," Adelaide said. "I would be happy to help in any way I can." "Good. That is settled then." Sarah stood and began clearing the dishes. "Now I am sure you are both exhausted. Adelaide, your room is ready. Samuel, you are in your usual room at the end of the hall. We can talk more in the morning and get you properly settled." Adelaide wanted to protest that she was not tired, that she wanted to stay up talking with Samuel, but a massive yawn betrayed her. Samuel laughed. "Go rest," he said. "I am not going anywhere. I will be here in the morning." Adelaide reluctantly said good night and climbed the stairs to her room. The bed was soft, the blankets clean and warm, and she was asleep almost before her head hit the pillow. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of voices drifting up from below. For a moment she was disoriented, unable to remember where she was. Then it all came back: Chloride, Sarah, Samuel. Safety. Adelaide dressed quickly and headed downstairs. She found Sarah in the kitchen, already hard at work preparing breakfast for the boarding house residents. "Good morning," Sarah said cheerfully. "Did you sleep well, like the dead?" Adelaide admitted. "Can I help? Can you make biscuits?" "I can." "Then you are hired." "Flour is in that bin, lard is in the crock, buttermilk in the ice box." Sarah paused. "We do have an ice box here. One of the perks of living near the mountains. The men cut ice from the lake in winter and store it in a cave. It keeps things cold all summer." Adelaide set to work, falling into the familiar rhythm of making biscuits. She had done this 1,000 times with her mother, and her hands moved without conscious thought. Soon the kitchen was filled with the scent of baking bread, and Sarah made appreciative noises. "You are a natural," she said. "I think we are going to get along just fine." Breakfast was a chaotic affair, with boarders filing in and out of the dining room, grabbing food and coffee before heading off to work in the mines or shops. Adelaide helped Sarah serve, and she tried to remember everyone's names. There was Mr. Peterson, an older Swedish gentleman who worked at the general store. Young Bobby Fitzgerald, barely 18, who had come west seeking his fortune. Mrs. Chen, a Chinese woman who ran a laundry service. And a dozen others, all different, all trying to make a life in this rough mountain town. Samuel appeared near the end of breakfast, looking well-rested. He smiled when he saw Adelaide helping Sarah, and Adelaide felt her heart do a little flip. How was it possible to feel this way about someone she had known for less than 2 weeks? After breakfast, Sarah shooed them both out of the kitchen. "Go, enjoy the day. Samuel, show Adelaide the town. Adelaide, get familiar with Chloride. You both have earned some rest." Samuel offered Adelaide his arm, and they stepped out into the bright mountain morning. Chloride was bustling with activity, miners heading up to the claims, wagons rattling down the main street loaded with ore or supplies. The town had a raw, unfinished quality, many of the buildings still rough lumber, some with canvas roofs. But there was energy here too, a sense of possibility. Samuel pointed out the important locations: the general store, the assayer's office, the saloons, several of which Adelaide noted with some concern. There was a small church at the end of the main street, and Adelaide made a mental note to attend services on Sunday. "It is not much," Samuel said. "But it is a real town with real opportunities. Sarah has done well here, and I think you will too." "I hope so," Adelaide said. "It is strange to think that this might be my home now. I was so set on Oregon, and now here I am in Colorado." "Life takes strange turns," Samuel agreed. "But maybe this is where you were supposed to end up all along." They walked for a while in comfortable silence. Then Samuel said, "I need to send a telegram to the ranch in Texas. Let them know when I will be back for the next drive. I will probably need to leave in about 3 weeks." Adelaide's heart sank. She had known this was coming, but 3 weeks seemed both too long and not nearly long enough. "Will you come back?" she asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. "I will come back," Samuel said firmly. "I promise you that. I have to make this drive, the money is too good to pass up. But after that, I am thinking maybe it is time to settle down. Maybe find a piece of land near here, start that ranch I have been dreaming about." "Near here?" Adelaide could not keep the hope out of her voice. Samuel stopped walking and turned to face her. "Adelaide, I know we have not known each other long, and I know everything has moved fast, but I meant what I said last night. I care for you. I want to see where this can go between us, and I cannot do that if I am in Texas and you are in Colorado." "I want that too," Adelaide said. "But Samuel, I do not want you to change your plans because of me. You have your own life, your own dreams." "You are part of those dreams now," Samuel said. "Maybe you have been from the moment I saw you standing alone on that prairie. I just did not realize it yet." Adelaide felt tears sting her eyes, but they were happy tears. "I do not know what I did to deserve this, to deserve you, but I am so grateful." Samuel took her hand, right there on the main street of Chloride where anyone could see. "You did not have to do anything. You are enough just as you are." They stood there, hands clasped, smiling at each other like fools, and Adelaide did not care who saw or what they thought. She was happy. After everything she had been through, all the loss and fear and uncertainty, she was genuinely, completely happy. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Adelaide threw herself into working at the boarding house, learning the routines, getting to know the residents. Sarah was a patient teacher and a kind employer, and Adelaide felt herself relaxing into this new life. She helped with cooking and cleaning, did the shopping, and even took on some of the bookkeeping when Sarah discovered Adelaide had a head for numbers. Samuel stayed close, helping with repairs around the boarding house, running errands, making himself useful. But he also spent time with Adelaide, walking with her in the evenings, talking for hours about everything and nothing. They attended church together on Sundays, which caused quite a bit of gossip, but Samuel had been right. Most people in Chloride were too busy with their own lives to care much about anyone else's business. There was one awkward moment when Mrs. Whitmore, the banker's wife and Chloride's self-appointed moral guardian, cornered Adelaide after services. "My dear," she said in a voice dripping with false sympathy, "I do hope you understand that people are talking. A young woman traveling alone with a man, living under the same roof. It simply is not proper." Adelaide felt her temper flare, but before she could respond, Sarah appeared at her elbow. "Mrs. Whitmore," Sarah said coolly, "Adelaide is under my protection and living in my home. If you have concerns about propriety, perhaps you should direct them to me. And I would remind you that casting judgment on others is also considered improper in most circles." Mrs. Whitmore sputtered, clearly not used to being challenged, but Sarah just smiled sweetly and steered Adelaide away. "Do not let her get to you," Sarah said. "She has nothing better to do than stick her nose in other people's affairs. Ignore her." "Is she right, though?" Adelaide asked. "Are people really talking?" "Some people always talk," Sarah said, "but most folks here have more sense than that. They can see that you are a good woman who got dealt a bad hand, and they can see that my brother is smitten with you, which frankly I think is adorable." Adelaide blushed. "Smitten? Oh please, the man looks at you like you hung the moon, and you are not much better. The two of you are so obviously in love it is almost painful to watch." Sarah smiled. "But it is also sweet. Samuel deserves happiness, and I think you do too. So do not let busybodies like Mrs. Whitmore ruin it for you. The days flew by, and suddenly Samuel was preparing to leave for Texas. Adelaide tried to be brave about it, tried not to show how much the thought of his absence pained her. But on the night before he was to depart, sitting on the porch of the boarding house under a sky full of stars, she could not hold back her feelings any longer. "I am going to miss you terribly," she said, her voice catching. "I know 3 weeks is not a long time in the grand scheme of things, but it feels like forever." "I will be back before you know it," Samuel said, taking her hand. "The drive should take about 4 months, maybe less if we push hard. And I will write to you every chance I get." 4 months? Adelaide felt her stomach drop. "You said 3 weeks." "No, I said I would leave in 3 weeks. The drive itself takes 4 months. Samuel squeezed her hand. "I am sorry, I thought you understood that." Adelaide tried to hide her dismay, but she could tell from Samuel's expression that she had failed. "4 months is a long time," she said quietly. "A lot can change in 4 months." "Not how I feel about you," Samuel said. "That will not change, I promise you." "But what if something happens to you? What if you meet someone else, someone more suitable? What if you just realize that I am not worth the trouble?" Samuel took both her hands now, holding them firmly. "Adelaide, listen to me. I have spent most of my life drifting from place to place, never putting down roots, never letting myself care too much about anything or anyone. And then I found you, standing alone in the middle of nowhere, and everything changed. You are not trouble. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, and I will come back. I swear it on everything I hold sacred." "I want to believe you," Adelaide whispered. "Then believe me. Have I given you any reason to doubt my word?" "No, never." "Then trust me now. I will come back to you, Adelaide. And when I do, I am going to ask you a very important question, so you should spend these next 4 months thinking about your answer." Adelaide's heart began to race. "What question?" Samuel smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. "You will have to wait and find out. But I think you can probably guess." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, but Adelaide did not want to. She had never wanted anything less. When his lips met hers, it was gentle and sweet and full of promise. Adelaide felt the world fall away, until there was nothing but this moment, this man, this perfect kiss. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Adelaide Jenkins," he said softly. "I know it is too soon and too fast and probably too foolish, but I do. I love you." "I love you too," Adelaide said, tears streaming down her face now. "I love you so much it scares me. Do not be scared, just wait for me. That is all I ask." The next morning, Adelaide watched Samuel ride out of Chloride, her heart feeling like it might crack in two. Sarah stood beside her, one arm around Adelaide's shoulders. "He will come back," Sarah said. "My brother is many things, but he is not a liar. If he said he will come back, he will." "I know," Adelaide said. "I just wish he did not have to go." "Me too," Sarah said. "But this is the life we have chosen out here in the West. The men we love have to leave sometimes. All we can do is wait and keep busy and have faith." So Adelaide waited, and she kept busy. She threw herself into her work at the boarding house, taking on more responsibilities as Sarah's trust in her grew. She made friends among the other women in town, joining a quilting circle and helping out at the church when they needed an extra pair of hands. She even started teaching a few of the children in the evenings, basic reading and writing lessons in the boarding house parlor. Word spread, and soon she had a dozen students. The town council got wind of her informal school and approached her about making it official. "We have been meaning to start a proper school for a while now," Mr. Henderson, the council president, told her. "But we have not had anyone qualified to teach. If you would be interested, we could offer you a small salary and the use of the old mining office building. It is not much, but it would be a start. Adelaide accepted, hardly able to believe her luck. This was what she had dreamed of, what she had been heading to Oregon to find. And here it was, falling into her lap in a little mountain town she had never heard of before Samuel brought her here. She wrote to Samuel about all of this in long, detailed letters, pouring out her heart onto the page. She told him about the school, about the students, about her growing friendship with Sarah and the other women in town. She told him how much she missed him, how she thought of him constantly, how she was counting the days until his return. Samuel's letters back were shorter, written in rough script on whatever paper he could find, but they were precious to Adelaide. He told her about the drive, the challenges of moving thousands of cattle across hundreds of miles. He told her about the other cowboys, the landscape, the weather. And he told her, over and over, that he loved her and he was coming back. The months crawled by. Autumn gave way to winter, and Chloride was buried under several feet of snow. Adelaide had never seen so much snow in her life, and she marveled at how the town simply carried on, people digging out paths between buildings, the miners still working despite the cold. Sarah taught her how to make snowshoes and how to layer clothing to stay warm, and Adelaide adapted to this harsh new climate. Christmas came, and Adelaide found herself surrounded by people who had become like family. Sarah threw a party at the boarding house, and there was singing and food and laughter. Adelaide thought of her mother, of the Christmases they had shared, and while she felt the ache of that loss, it was softened by gratitude for what she had found here. In January, Adelaide received word that Samuel's cattle drive had been successful, and he was on his way back. He expected to reach Chloride by mid-February. Adelaide felt like she could barely breathe with anticipation. 4 months had felt like 4 years, and she was desperate to see him again, to know that he was real and that his feelings had not changed. February arrived cold and clear, and Adelaide watched the road into town obsessively. Every time she heard hoofbeats, her heart would leap, only to sink again when it was not Samuel. Sarah teased her gently about it, but Adelaide could see the same anticipation in Sarah's eyes. She missed her brother too. And then, on a bright afternoon when the sun was turning the snow into a field of diamonds, Adelaide looked up from sweeping the porch and saw a familiar figure on a paint horse riding down the main street. She dropped the broom and ran, propriety be damned, and Samuel dismounted just in time to catch her as she threw herself into his arms. "You came back," she sobbed into his shoulder. "You really came back." "I told you I would," Samuel said, holding her tight. "Did you doubt me?" "Not for a second, but I am still so happy to see you." Samuel pulled back just enough to look at her face, and then he kissed her right there in the middle of the street, in front of God and everyone. Adelaide heard whoops and hollers from the men nearby, and she knew this would be the talk of the town for weeks. But she did not care. Samuel was here, he was real, he loved her. When they finally broke apart, Samuel kept his arms around her. "I missed you so much," he said. "Every day, every mile, all I could think about was getting back to you. I missed you too, more than words can say. Then maybe I should not waste any more time with words." Samuel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Adelaide's breath caught. Samuel dropped to one knee, right there in the snow, and opened the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. "Adelaide Jenkins," he said, his voice clear and strong. "I love you with everything I am. You are the strongest, kindest, most remarkable woman I have ever known, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that to you. Will you marry me?" Adelaide could barely see through her tears, but she nodded frantically. "Yes," she said. "Yes, of course, yes." Samuel stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, and they kissed again while the whole town applauded. Sarah appeared from the boarding house, laughing and crying at the same time, and pulled them both into a hug. "I knew it," she said. "I knew from the moment you two arrived together that this was how it would end." "End," Samuel said, grinning. "This is just the beginning." They were married 3 weeks later in the little church at the end of Main Street. Adelaide wore a dress that Sarah helped her make, white lace over blue silk, and she carried wildflowers that Samuel had ridden into the mountains to gather, just like the flowers she had been picking the day he found her. Samuel wore his best suit, and Adelaide thought he had never looked more handsome. The whole town turned out for the wedding, even Mrs. Whitmore, who had the grace to look ashamed of her earlier judgments. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt, and when the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Adelaide felt a sense of rightness that she had never experienced before. This was where she belonged. With this man, in this town, in this life they would build together. Sarah hosted the reception at the boarding house, and there was dancing and music, and more food than Adelaide had ever seen. Bobby Fitzgerald played the fiddle, and Mr. Peterson sang Swedish folk songs in his booming voice, and Adelaide danced with Samuel until her feet ached, and she could barely breathe from laughing. As the evening wound down and guests began to drift away, Sarah pulled Adelaide aside. "I have a wedding gift for you," she said. "Samuel told me about his dream of starting a ranch, and I want to help make that happen. I have been saving money from the boarding house, and I have enough to help you buy some land. There is a parcel about 5 miles north of here near a creek with good grazing. The owner is looking to sell. It is not huge, but it is a start." Adelaide was overwhelmed. "Sarah, that is too much. We cannot accept that." "Of course you can. You are family now, and besides, I am being selfish. If you buy land nearby, I get to keep both of you close. Think of it as an investment in my own happiness." Sarah smiled. "Please, let me do this." Adelaide hugged her sister-in-law tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything, for taking me in, for trusting me, for loving me. You have given me so much." "You have given me just as much," Sarah said. "I get to see my brother happy for the first time in years. That is worth more than any amount of money." That night, in the small room at the boarding house that was now officially theirs, Samuel and Adelaide lay together in the darkness, talking softly about the future. "A ranch," Adelaide said, tracing patterns on Samuel's chest. "We are really going to have a ranch. With Sarah's help, yes. We will need to work hard, save every penny, build it slowly. But I think we can do it, together." "Together," Adelaide repeated, loving the sound of that word. "I like that. You and me building something that is ours. And maybe someday, if we are lucky, a family to fill it," Samuel said carefully. "I know we have not talked about children, but I would like them, if you would." "I would like that too," Adelaide said. "But let us take our time, get the ranch established, make sure we are stable. And then we can think about adding to our family." They fell asleep wrapped in each other's arms, and Adelaide dreamed of the future. She saw a house with a wide porch, horses grazing in green pastures, children laughing and playing in the yard. She saw years stretching ahead, full of hard work and joy, challenges and triumphs. And through it all, she saw Samuel beside her, steady and strong and true. The next few years proved to be everything Adelaide had dreamed of and more. Samuel bought the land Sarah had found, and they spent every spare moment working on their ranch. Samuel built a small house with his own hands, and Adelaide helped, learning how to use a hammer and saw, how to chink logs and lay floorboards. It was hard work, but it was satisfying in a way Adelaide had never experienced before. Every board they nailed, every wall they raised was theirs. Adelaide continued teaching in Chloride, and Samuel worked as a ranch hand for some of the larger spreads in the area while building up their own herd. They started with just a few head of cattle and a handful of horses, but slowly, patiently, they grew. Samuel had a gift with animals, a quiet patience that Adelaide admired. The horses especially seemed to trust him, and word spread. Soon people were bringing him their difficult horses to train, and that brought in extra income. 2 years after their wedding, Adelaide discovered she was pregnant. She told Samuel on a spring evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and pink. "I have something to tell you," she said, taking his hand. "We are going to have a baby." Samuel's face went through a series of expressions: shock, joy, fear, and then pure happiness. He pulled Adelaide into his arms and held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "A baby," he breathed. "We are really going to be parents, we really are," Adelaide said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you happy?" "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Samuel said. "I am terrified and thrilled and so in love with you I cannot even think straight." Their son was born in December, a few days before Christmas. The labor was long and difficult, and there were moments when Adelaide feared she would not survive it. But Sarah was there, and the town doctor, and Samuel never left her side. When the baby finally arrived, squalling and red-faced, Adelaide felt a surge of love so powerful it took her breath away. They named him James, after Adelaide's father. He was a healthy, robust baby with his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes. Samuel was besotted from the first moment, holding his son with a gentleness that made Adelaide fall in love with him all over again. "He is perfect," Samuel whispered, staring down at the tiny face. "You are perfect. How did I get so lucky?" "We are both lucky," Adelaide said, exhausted but happy beyond measure. "We found each other." Over the next few years, their family grew. 2 years after James came a daughter, Emma, with bright red hair that seemed to come from nowhere in either family tree. And 3 years after that, another son, Thomas, who looked like a perfect blend of his parents. The house Samuel had built seemed to burst at the seams with love and laughter, and the controlled chaos of raising 3 children. The ranch grew too. Samuel's reputation as a horse trainer spread throughout Colorado, and he was able to charge good money for his services. Adelaide continued teaching, bringing in a steady income that allowed them to save and invest. They added more land, more animals, more stability. It was not always easy. There were bad years when the weather turned or prices dropped. There were times when money was tight and Adelaide had to get creative with meals, when they had to make do and mend instead of buying new. But through it all, they had each other, and that made every hardship bearable. Sarah remained a constant presence in their lives, the beloved aunt who spoiled the children shamelessly, and always had a kind word or helping hand when needed. She never remarried, claiming that she was too old and set in her ways for such nonsense. But Adelaide suspected the truth was that Sarah had loved her husband so completely that she could not imagine replacing him. When James was 10, Emma 8, and Thomas 5, Adelaide and Samuel celebrated their 10th wedding anniversary. They left the children with Sarah for the weekend and rode up into the mountains, back to the meadow where they had camped on their journey to Chloride. It was summer now, and the meadow was filled with wildflowers, a riot of purple and yellow and pink. They made camp as they had all those years ago, Samuel building a fire while Adelaide spread out their bedrolls. They ate a simple meal and watched the stars come out one by one until the sky was ablaze with light. "You ever regret it?" Samuel asked suddenly. "Giving up Oregon, settling here instead?" Adelaide thought about it seriously because Samuel deserved an honest answer. "No," she said finally. I thought Oregon was my destiny, but I was wrong. You were my destiny. This life, this family, this place. Everything that happened, as painful as it was, brought me exactly where I needed to be. How could I regret that? I think about that day I found you sometimes, Samuel said. What if I had been riding a different trail? What if I had been an hour earlier or later? We would have missed each other completely. But we did not miss each other, Adelaide said. Whatever forces govern this universe, they put you on that trail at that exact moment. And I will be grateful for that for the rest of my life. Samuel pulled her close, and they lay back to watch the stars, wrapped in each other's arms. I love you, Adelaide Reid, Samuel said. I have loved you from the moment you looked at me with those green eyes, even though you were crying and covered in dust and had every reason to be terrified of me. I was never terrified of you, Adelaide said. Maybe I should have been, but I was not. Something in me recognized you, knew you were safe, knew you were mine. I was yours from that moment, Samuel agreed. I just did not know it yet. They made love under the stars, tender and passionate, celebrating 10 years of marriage, of partnership, of love that had weathered every storm. And when they rode back to the ranch the next day, Adelaide felt renewed, refreshed, ready to face whatever the future might bring. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and joys. James grew into a serious young man who loved the ranch and the horses as much as his father did. Emma was bright and curious, always asking questions, always seeking to understand the world around her. Thomas was wild and reckless, giving Adelaide more than a few gray hairs with his antics. But all three children were loved fiercely, and they knew it. Adelaide's school in Chloride thrived, and she became one of the most respected citizens in town. When the town council voted to expand the school and hire additional teachers, they asked Adelaide to serve as headmistress. It was an honor she accepted with pride, knowing that her mother would have been so pleased to see what she had accomplished. Samuel's ranch became one of the most successful in the area. He was known throughout Colorado as the man to see if you had a difficult horse or needed quality breeding stock. People came from as far as Denver to do business with him, and the Reid name became synonymous with integrity and skill. Sarah grew older but remained sharp and capable, running her boarding house with the same efficiency she had always shown. When she turned 60, Adelaide and Samuel threw her a birthday party that seemed to include half of Chloride. Sarah complained that it was too much fuss, but Adelaide could see the tears in her eyes, the joy at being surrounded by so many people who loved her. On a summer evening when Adelaide was 45 and Samuel 48, they sat on their porch watching the grandchildren play in the yard. James had married a sweet girl named Mary from Denver, and they had 2 children of their own now. Emma had shocked everyone by announcing her intention to become a doctor, and she was studying in Philadelphia, coming home only for holidays. Thomas, Wild Thomas, had joined the army and was stationed in New Mexico, writing long letters about his adventures. "We did good," Samuel said, reaching for Adelaide's hand. "Look at all this. We built this, you and me." "We did," Adelaide agreed. "When I think back to that girl standing alone on the prairie, I can hardly believe this is the same life. It feels like a dream." "If it is a dream, I never want to wake up," Samuel said. Adelaide squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses earned from a lifetime of hard work, the strength that had never failed her. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night? When you found me, I said a lot of things. Which part? You said you could not leave me there alone. That you would not be able to live with yourself if you rode away." Adelaide turned to look at him, this man who had been her savior, her partner, her love for more than 20 years. "You changed my entire life with that one decision. Everything good that has happened to me, every joy, every blessing, it all started because you chose to stop, because you refused to leave me behind. Samuel's eyes were suspiciously bright. I got just as much out of it as you did, he said. You gave me a reason to stop drifting, to put down roots. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. I was the one who was saved, Adelaide, not you. Then we saved each other, Adelaide said. How about that? I can live with that, Samuel said, and he kissed her, sweet and gentle and familiar. After more than 20 years of marriage, Adelaide still felt that same flutter in her chest, that same sense of coming home. As the sun set and the mountains turned purple in the fading light, Adelaide thought about the long, winding road that had brought her here. She thought about her mother, about the wagon train that had abandoned her, about the fear and loneliness she had felt standing alone on the endless prairie. And she thought about Samuel, riding toward her when anyone else would have ridden away, seeing her worth when the rest of the world saw only a burden. Life had not been easy. There had been hard years and heartbreak, struggles and losses, but there had also been love, so much love. The kind of love that built ranches and raised children and turned strangers into families. The kind of love that endured. And as Adelaide sat on her porch with Samuel's hand in hers, surrounded by the life they had built together, she knew with absolute certainty that she would not change a single thing. Not the pain, not the fear, not the abandonment, because all of it, every terrible moment, had led her here. To this man, this place, this beautiful, imperfect, perfectly wonderful life. She had been left behind by the wagon train, lost and alone and terrified. But a passing cowboy had refused to leave her there. And in that refusal, in that single act of compassion, he had given her everything. He had given her hope and love, and a future brighter than any she could have imagined. Adelaide leaned her head on Samuel's shoulder and watched their grandchildren play as the stars began to appear overhead, one by one, constant and unchanging. And she smiled because she was home. She was loved. And she was exactly where she was always meant to be.